Hey, aloha everyone. Michelle Melendez with blossominnerwellness.com and standtogetherhawaii.com. This is also on the Voice of Kona radio. If you guys are listening on the Big Island, mahalo so much. I have an amazing guest, Marjory Wildcraft. I'm so excited to have her, and I'll tell you guys why in a second, but let me go ahead and just read a little bit of her bio, which is just a snippet of who she is and what she's been doing to support people to grow their own food and do so much more. So Marjory Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. She is the global advocate for homegrown food on every table. In 2009, she founded the Grow Network, which is the web's best resources for modern self-sufficiency. She has been featured by National Geographic as an expert in off-grid living. She hosted the Mother Earth News online homesteading summit, and she is listed in the Who's Who in America for having inspired hundreds of thousands of backyard mini farms. So, Marjorie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited about this interview.
Wow, yeah, thank you. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now, and I guess it sort of adds up. I'm like, oh my God, really? Oh yeah, I did do that.
Really does add up. It really does add up. And just what you're about right now is so important because we know with everything that's happening in the world, it is crucial to start to grow our own food and to be prepared. And what got you started on this journey?
Well, yeah, I didn't come from like hippie parents and on growing up in a farm. I'm not a farmer's daughter. I mean, nothing. Grew up in a subdivision in North Miami, Florida, and kind of poor, actually. Although, being poor in the United States is nothing like being poor somewhere else. Um, I ended up getting a degree in electrical engineering, and like a lot of kids who come from poor families, I was always very, very interested in money, and I always wanted to live overseas. So I went over to Hong Kong, and I was managing for Motorola, like these cellular telephone networks was amazing. And Hong Kong is like the Hong Kong Chinese are very interested in money, and they said, "Hey, Marjorie, you got to take this class from this guy named Robert." And I went and did it, and this guy Robert just blew my mind. It ultimately inspired me to leave engineering. And I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, and creating a real estate investment business. Made my first million before I was 40. And that business was so successful that Robert asked me if I would be on his infomercials for Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was Robert Kiyosaki before he was famous. And so nothing in there has anything to do with growing food, right? Living in Hong Kong, you don't even, I was on the 46th floor in a penthouse, it wasn't like, um, and I was starting to have kids, we're doing the family thing. And I was volunteering. A friend of mine was the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, and he wanted to start getting locally grown organic food into the school system. And I said, I'll help Steve. And that project was an utter and complete failure. It was a disaster. And I had no idea how this was going to change my life that one night. I mean, it was like you know, the the semi truck runs you over, or the stage 4 diagnosis of cancer. I mean, it was like that. And what it was there are not enough farmers in all of Bastrop in Travis counties to provide even part of the vegetables for one small rural elementary school. Like, there's no food locally growing anymore. And, bless his heart, with Willie Nelson, he tried to save the family farm. It didn't work. And so I couldn't stop shaking because I knew there was only 4 days worth of food in the grocery stores, and I knew that food traveled an average of 1,500 miles. And then I was surrounded by 20 million Texans who are armed to the teeth, and it just had me rethink everything in my life. And I realized that there are scenarios where no amount of money will buy you what you need, and that the entire food supply has to be rebuilt from the ground up. And I honestly, I was like shaking. For years, I had panic attacks and nights. So, I mean, I was really very disturbed by this opening. And I took a lot of flack from family and friends who said, Marjorie, this is the United States of America. We're never going to have empty shelves. We're never going to have supply chain problems. And I said, look, I've been given the download. There's plenty of people who know how to make money. I've proven I know how to make money. There are not many people who know how to grow food. So I'm going to learn this. And then as soon as you start growing your own food, the very first thing you're going to realize is that you can't do it alone, that you need community. And so then I began to really teach other people. And then there's so much fun to growing food, you know. There's chickens and rabbits and gardens and goats and wildcrafting, and then we got into home medicine and treating infections with antibiotics, and then I ended up creating this whole business that now is this really large web presence with all these resources on how to live, self-sufficiently. And yeah, so I did not get into it because, oh, it was nice. I got into it because I was freaked out. So if you're freaked out right now, and honestly, you should be, um, then it's okay. I promise you, this growing food, as humble and as simple as it sounds, is it's incredibly healing and incredibly empowering, and it will help you through this transition.
Yeah, and I love that you said transition because that's what it is. I'm, there is it's a time to be aware versus
Hmm.
afraid. Aware. And because I'm always about, trusting in the infinite creator and following your guided intuition. If you guys are watching this, it's not a mistake that you found this video, because I'll be the first to say, I've grown one garden on my own. And I was so excited when the carrots came in and we ate the carrots. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is great. I did this. And it was such a
Yeah.
rewarding feeling and empowering feeling. But I do want to share your website now. And then I have some more questions to ask, especially how does somebody start growing food in a condo or apartment or something like that. But here's her website, you guys, thegrownetwork.com, grownetwork.com. So if you're listening.
Yeah, actually, the best website to go to would be backyard food production, if you can whip that up, because there you go. There you go. That's it right there.
Okay, right here.
Thank you. How to grow lots of food in a grid down situation, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape. And I mean it. I just redid, this is a free webinar, and I just redid it to like really tighten it up because nobody has time anymore. As I go really fast and I give you the Believe me, I've spent 20 years teaching people how to grow food and trying all different ways, and I've cherry picked the three fastest, easiest, and funnest way for somebody who has never done this before to do it. So backyardfoodproduction.com, watch the free webinar, and I give you a lot of free resources that'll come in your email follow-up sequence, and that will get you started and really smart, really quick.
So if somebody is just starting off, let's say they
Yeah.
live in an apartment, what would you suggest that they
Well,
start?
I know most people are going to be counterintuitive with this because they always think Marjorie gardens, and actually animal products are much more easier to grow and more calorically and nutritionally dense. And so if you have a backyard, I recommend people get like a laying flock of chickens, like 6 laying hens that'll produce eggs. And if you're living in an apartment or condominium, believe it or not, you could have quail. In fact, I set a girlfriend up with a little quail system, and it's like 3 feet by 2 feet, and it's stacked, and she's got 10 quail in there, and they produce about 10 quail eggs a day, which is equivalent to breakfast. Yeah.
So I love that you said chickens because these eggs here are so expensive right now. And so that's
Yeah.
that's actually something. And then I've never even thought about somebody having quail in their apartment. That's
I know, right? I've got to go to I've set my friend Shannon up with it, and I got to go shoot some video. And I've done some stuff years ago on it. I got to refresh all of that and get that up because there are so many people in apartments or condominiums. But let me lay this out for you why I really recommend chickens first. And most people I deal with has a little bit of space, and you can do this in the size of a parking spot. So 6 laying hens. And by the way, you don't need a rooster. Those hens will lay just fine without a rooster. And honestly, a lot of times women know we don't really necessarily want a rooster. But they do serve a very good purpose. But anyway, an average laying hen will lay about 250 eggs a year. And so 6 of them, you're going to get 1,500 eggs in a year. And if you think about that, that's 3 egg omelets for breakfast and 33 dozen eggs to share, give away, use in other recipes. So you now have breakfast handled for the rest of your life. And in order to get this set up, and actually, if you go to the webinar, I will, there's diagrams, I show you what it looks like. And we have a lot of other follow-up resources I'll get you for if, you know, and if you're somewhat handy, you can easily build this thing in a weekend or two. If you're not, you know, get somebody to do it, either trade with them or buy it. If you got money, there's these beautiful, like, chicken condominiums. And I'm like, I would move in that. It's, you know, like, so you can go as crazy as you want. But I go over the basics of what you need in the webinar. But I mean, you can get that built in a weekend or two. I really recommend you go buy some chicken feed to start. Now, one of the things that I do give you in the follow-up sequence is a video from my friend Justin Rhodes on how to produce all the chicken feed for your chickens for free. But don't do that in phase one, right? Do that in phase two. In phase one, you're getting the birds in, you're getting the coop, you're learning to water and feed, you're starting to get into the routine of collecting eggs every day. That's a lot. That's a chunk. Let's do this in stages and steps. And I found over the years that's the best way to get people started. And chicken free feed is still fairly cheap as chicken feed, right? So I mean, it's still affordable. Um, and yeah, you know, get some water and a watering system. And again, that's another thing that I give you in the follow-up sequence is how to make this really simple 5-gallon bucket watering thing that'll just help automate your watering tasks. Craigslist is fantastic. You can go buy laying hens. They start laying at about 6 months of age. So go buy 6 laying hens that lay at about 6 months of age. You know, feed stores or other places you can pick them up at that age. It's going to take them a few days to get adjusted to their new environment, you know, and that's it. I mean, you can have breakfast handled for the rest of your life in a matter of a couple of weeks, and that's huge. I mean, right out of the get-go. And the egg is unbelievably nutritious. It's a whole food. That whole egg is a whole food.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because this is actually where I'm at right now in my new place where I'm at. Is my next step is to get, and in fact, right before our call, I was on Craigslist looking at chicken coop.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
so right up my alley. So if somebody, let's talk about now the garden. So if somebody does have a yard,
Hmm.
um, how long would this take somebody to start their garden, and what would you recommend? Here on Hawaii, we have a thing, we have pigs. So what I was going to be doing is getting those tubs, those metal tubs,
Hmm. Hmm.
to pigs out, because they do get in the area where I'm at. But so what would you say to somebody who's just starting off in their yard?
Yeah, so the easiest and simplest and best gardening system for most people and the most economic is going to be raised beds, just like what you're talking about. And I recommend people make them out of cinder blocks. And your average cinder block, you know, 8 inches high by, you know, 14 inches long by 8 inches wide. They're about 16 pounds. And so a woman or a child can pick it up. You can build this, right? This is not something you need burly dudes to get this to happen. And you make it to where, make two of them that are about 50 square feet. So they're going to be, you know, after you count the width of the block, you know, like 10 or 12 feet wide by, long by, 5 feet wide or so. And the cool thing about the cinder blocks is and too high. And the cool thing about it is if you have a bad back or you're not in the greatest shape, you can sit on the blocks and be able to reach into that garden and do things. Um, and fill it with the highest quality soil that you can get, right? Get the best quality soil that you can. And then that soil is special soil and you want to treat it as special soil. And that's where you're growing your produce. And in a 100 square foot garden bed, and again, I'll show you the gardening system that works for that. I have grown. One year I was living in oh, not one year, a couple of years I was living in Colorado because I like to change bioregions. Like now I'm in the tropics where you are, and I was in Texas and Oregon, and it's just wonderful to, once you've really mastered one thing, it's kind of fun to go jerk yourself around, basically. You know, like growing in Colorado is entirely different from Puerto Rico, and you learn so much more. Anyway, we had only one very, very short growing season in Colorado, and in a 100 square foot bed, you know, two 50 square foot beds, I grew all of the produce I needed for a year in that. And I was, you know, drying and canning and freezing. I was actually giving stuff away. So you can grow an incredible amount in just 100 square feet. And if you got a couple of growing seasons, you're going to grow a lot more. So I really recommend you have a couple of components going on. So you have gardens and you have chickens and you have a couple of things going because we never know what's going to hit us. Um, but it's just really easy and delightful, and especially when they're kind of compact like that, it's easier to manage, right? If you have a smaller thing, it's easier to get started. And then, maybe next year you'll go, okay, I'll add a couple more, or I'll add a couple more. But try to do this in a holistic, step-by-step way so you're not completely overwhelmed.
I want to say too, so what I want to start growing, and I'd love to get your opinion. I love cabbage, beets, and our sweet potatoes. Those are the three things that for myself, I want to start my beds with. What
Uh-huh.
would you recommend for somebody just starting off? What would you recommend for them to start to grow?
Well, since we're headed into summertime and you live in a fairly warm climate, the sweet potatoes are going to be good for the summer. Cabbage and beets are more of a cool temperature, a cool time type crop. So, do your sweet potatoes now. Let's see, what else can you grow? Okra, basil. You could probably get a good tomato crop in now. Um, yeah, I really recommend, well, it's kind of a double-edged thing. One is grow things that you really like, and that you're interested in. But then on the other hand, I also tell people if you haven't ever eaten homegrown food, you've never eaten. If you haven't grown your own vegetables, you've never eaten vegetables. So if you say, "Oh, I don't like squash," because you've only eaten the stuff in the grocery store or at restaurants, you've never eaten squash. I promise you. Like I never used to like yellow squash or soybeans, and then I started growing them myself, and I'm like, whoa. So a wonderful thing to do is local master gardener groups, local organic gardening clubs, even FFA and 4-H, and find some people or somebody who's got a good garden down the street. Bring them a small gift, maybe a hand shovel or some gloves or something, and and say, hi, I saw your garden. Could you tell me? You know what I mean? That's the way to go. And I have found like there are people that are like total curmudgeons or Scrooges or whatever, like at work or wherever. When they're in their garden, they are a completely different personality. So don't be afraid to approach somebody in their garden.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say when you were saying about if you haven't eaten your own vegetables, you don't know what the taste is, how you don't know what you're missing. But also I want to say that the sugar industry and our all the additives in our food have messed with our taste buds. And this is why people when they don't understand what a real true vegetable actually tastes like because it's not in there like organically grown or here we have Korean natural farmers here on this island, so there is a lot of different areas. Check out your local clubs like that. That is such a great piece of advice there. How long should somebody expect to put in their garden?
You mean what,
How long should
most, what's that? The
it take? How long should somebody expect if they're thinking, okay, I want to grow my garden? How long should they expect every week to be putting into their garden?
Oh, I see. We know what's the time
Yeah.
commitment. Yeah. So in that webinar, I show you this thing, and it really, it's like about a half an hour a day. It's really a short amount of time. And so, you're going to be messing with the chickens, you're messing with the garden, and we'll get to the third component in a second. And on those mornings when you've got a dentist appointment and the tire just went flat and and the kids are screaming, you really only need 5 minutes. You're just checking water levels, checking feed, and you're running, right? And then sometimes like on the weekend it's like, oh, when we're changing the season, okay, well, we're going to spend a couple of hours and adding compost and cleaning this up. So but on average it's about a half an hour a day. And so with the garden, really all you're going to want to do is just check the moisture levels, and if it hasn't rained and it's dry, you're just going to want to water it. And really that's only like 2 or 3 minutes, honestly. That used to be my favorite thing. Colorado was so dry, and that watering the garden every day was my favorite thing. I did this video one time where I was just dancing and having a good time with the water. So I got to rerun that video sometime. Chickens, you're just collecting eggs. By the way, if you have kids, taking care of the chickens and taking care of the eggs is traditionally children's work. And giving kids meaningful work to do when they're young is so important. That is so disconnected. And, saying, hey, you're going to be responsible for collecting the eggs and making sure they're fed and making sure that, and they can do this at surprisingly young ages, like 4, 5, 6 years old. And they're very, they may drop a basket every now and then, whatever. But you bring them in and then teach them how to make omelets and they're providing and they're helping for the family's nourishment. And it's a very, very important job. Um,
That
it
reminds me of
doesn't, yeah, it just doesn't take that long.
my parents. They had a farm, and well, really an orchard, and so they had olives and kiwis and chili peppers, but they had chickens, and so that was our job actually to go
Yeah,
and
there you go. Yeah.
so
I used to do a lot of interviews with elders, like really older people, and I would ask them, what is your favorite memory of being a kid and growing up? And it was always with the grandparents. It was always something to do with food. It was never like, oh, they took me to the movies or they took me skating or they bought me this shirt. It was always like, for me with my Aunt Julia, we went out in the backyard and collected apples and made applesauce. Or, I went with Grandpa and we got eggs, or we were digging potato. It's always around food. It's never any of the junky stuff, the blinky shiny, manufactured entertainment stuff that people remember. The
yeah,
deep memories always come from doing something real and tangible and delicious.
of that. So, what is the secret to a green thumb?
Yeah, and this is a good one, right? So most people think the dirt is just there to hold up the plant, right? That nothing could be further from the truth. The soil is actually the digestive system for the plant. So you know how we're all into making sure that our gut microbiome is healthy and has a lot of diversity and we're eating a lot of nutrition. Well, the soil really needs to be alive and vibrant with health and have a lot of minerals in it. And the soil, having really, really, really high quality soil, is the secret to a green thumb. So the better quality soil, it's going to be able to retain moisture better, so it'll be more forgiving of when you accidentally forgot. Um, Plants, just like humans, when you don't have the nutrition you need, you come down with diseases, right? You don't have enough vitamin C, you get scurvy, right? But no vitamin D, and oh my God, the complications are incredible. And the same thing with plants. So, but when they have the complement of minerals and things that they need and life, they're healthy and they're strong. And are you going to have maybe some yeah, you're going to have some, but the insects are the predators to the plant kingdom, and their job is to take out the weaker species. And so if your plants are weak, you're going to be attracting insects. There's this one older gardener I had who's a wonderful friend and had this whole row of squash, and insects weren't touching any of it except for this one plant at the end was just totally covered with some kind of beetle or something like that. And it was like that one plant was weak. It was at the end. It was for some reason there wasn't getting the irrigation or something, and they just destroyed it. So really, really, really good soil is the secret to a green thumb.
So, what produces the most food in the least amount of time and space in somebody's garden? And I totally agree with that around the soil. And let me actually just add to that a little bit before that question, because compost, like the last farm I was at, we would put our compost in a bucket, and then I would go and I would dig in the garden and put the
Hmm.
compost in the garden to feed the worms that would feed the
Yeah.
so that was great. So you guys don't just toss your compost into your garbage disposal. Stick it into
No,
it.
the city of Austin, I used to live in Central Texas. They actually have a program where they will subsidize you buying a chicken coop, and they have educational classes on how to have backyard chickens. And I was interviewing a representative from the city, and I'm like, why are you doing that? I mean, is the goodness of your own heart? And they're like, no. We have found that chicken owners have 30% less waste, and we don't have as much of a landfill problem.
Oh, what?
So, yeah, you'll be feeding your chickens, you'll be making absolutely, you need to be making compost because you want to be cycling all of those nutrients in your system. Now, the most productive thing, again, is going to be animals, and the third component in this is actually a small rabbitry. And I'm sometimes a little reluctant because people are like, oh, rabbits are so cute, but they're they breed like rabbits. You get a lot of production, and they're easy to feed because they eat greens and they eat your landscape trimmings and things like that. You get a lot of food out of the rabbits. You get a lot of food out of the chickens. All of it, you know. And then the other thing about the rabbits is you're absolutely right. The pellets and the manure. And rabbit manure, by the way, you can dump directly on your garden. It's the manure from an herbivore is not what we call hot, and you can use it directly. So cow manure, horse manure, rabbit manure, sheep. But um, um, omnivores. Okay, I'm sorry, I was carnivore, insectivore. Chickens and pigs are omnivores, and their stuff is very, very, very hot. So you have to compost that first. But oh my goodness, I was just with a friend, and she was showing me her garden was exploding, and I'm like, wow, okay, what are you doing? She goes, it's rabbit manure. Yeah. So, yeah.
So, how has growing food changed your life in now? Like when you look at it, what your journey that got you here to this point and how many thousands of lives you supported, what is your biggest takeaway from what it is that
Yeah, I am so, so grateful for that night in Red Rock when that whole thing collapsed. And literally, I mean, I was shaking for hours like like this. It has been the best thing I've ever done. I mean, it's really gotten me in touch with nature and connected to earth. And um, it's healed me on every single level you can imagine. So on the physical level, I used to have severe allergies and a bunch of that's long, long gone. Emotionally, I'm just not concerned about supply chains, grocery stores closing, tariffs and all the issues because I know I can provide my own basic needs. Mentally, reams of studies show that if you eat higher quality, nutrient dense, clean food, you score higher on intelligence tests, and that just makes sense, right? And then actually the other is spiritually, you're using your hands and working directly with forces of creation. And I am going to tell you that magic happens. It's going to happen to you. Like there'll be all kinds of, you're going to be way more relaxed and you're going to be outside because electronics and water don't mix. You're going to be out there away from all that and you're going to be doing something deeply meaningful and healthful and beneficial to yourself and your family. And you can get connected with the divine in a way that you just can't through other mechanisms. So it has changed every aspect of my life. And even if we weren't talking about this point in time where we're in the apocalypse, I would still be always growing. I will always be growing my own food just for the sheer joy and delight and pleasure of it.
yeah, yeah, I love that. And I love that you said that because one of the first things I tell people when they're dealing with over a burnout is I say, get into nature. Put your feet on the
Hmm.
ground, literally, you just put even a hand on a tree. It's like tree huggers, but just one hand on a tree and close your eyes and just breathe and listen to the sounds around you because that drops you in. And as soon as you are outside and you let your face, the sun shine on your face, the frequency, because we're frequency
Hmm.
beings, it actually raises your frequency and starts to release stress. And we're not meant to just live in these little boxes with these computers and the telephone and the phones right next to our faces all the time. So getting into nature, growing your own food, definitely the way to go right now. And also I do want to encourage people, don't live in fear around what's happening, live in awareness of what's happening. So many people just, I love that one movie, Don't Look Up, and it just
Yeah.
cracks me up because I'm like, that's exactly what they want. They don't want you to look at what is really happening. They want you to go throughout your day like not really, it's being distracted. Look over here, don't look at what's really happening. So this is about being aware and then taking responsibility, doing what we call here in Hawaii, your kuleana. What is yours to do? And what yours is to do, I really feel each one of us is to get back in with nature, to start to grow our own food. I love this. So, Marjorie, any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And and you're right. It's just an amazing process that will reconnect you on so many ways. And we are headed into this incredible period of change. And I love the divine has given us a way to navigate this. Like you could have avoided the whole experience we had with jabs and all that, if you kind of was seeing what was going on, you could work around that. And what we have coming in front of us is going to be some problems with the food supply. If you didn't already understand it was toxic, but the supply of it is about to be a problem. But there are ways to navigate that, and it's actually wonderful, wholesome things. So there's the divine always gives us a way. My role in this whole scenario has been to help people to find the fastest, easiest ways for you to be able to, get up and produce a lot of food very quickly. And I'm very delighted. This is I don't have the word you have, but I call it's my joyful duty, and I am so happy to do this and to serve at this point in time for people. And it's going to be the best thing you've ever done in your life. You might be going into it like, oh no, but a couple of years from now, you'll be like, wow, that was so good.
Absolutely. And we do need a shift because it's coming regardless,
Yeah,
regardless. And so
yeah,
many people, they're dealing with brain fog, they're dealing with different diseases and illnesses, and it's because, in my view, my background is a fitness trainer for since 1996, and in my view is that it's toxicity and, just like you said, deficiency in vitamins and minerals. Those are the two things that I support people with, because when you are dealing with something in your body that is an illness, it's coming from, in my view, and the books that I've read, deficiency and toxicity are the first two things that you want to take a look at to move toward better health. And one of the best ways to do that is to grow your own food, because now you know what's in the soil, what's
yeah.
being put on it. So I love that. I love that,
You
Mark.
beautifully said. I say the same thing on the physical level. Health is very simple. It's reduced toxicity and increased nutrition. And we do know there's other causes of problem, like stress or mental or whatever, and you do need to exercise, but those two are huge. Like they're like 80% or 90%. So, and you can knock all of it out with backyard.
I love it. So you guys watching, think of one thing that you can do this week that will move you in that direction. It doesn't have to be all at once. Just one thing that's going to move you toward food, supporting your own food supply. And again, it's not a mistake that it says in the Bible 365 times, fear not. Fear not, you guys, 365 times, one for every single day, because we're not, it's not a mistake that each one of us is here. Marjorie, you actually followed your guided intuition, your in spirit, your inspiration, and to do this work. So it's definitely, you are definitely guided here to be a way shower. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time today.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate. Yeah, the one thing that you can do that's so simple is go watch that webinar at Backyard Food Production, and it'll just give you a whole set of direction on where to go and how to get there, and it'll help get you there a lot faster. So,
I'm going to show that website one more time because it is very important. Backyard food production. Let me just do one more screen share for you guys, and then I always do a prayer at the end, or a visualization.
oh, let's do it. Yes, I love prayers and visualization. Absolutely.
Production, and that is the website right there, backyardfoodproduction.com. Go watch that free webinar, free, and check it out, you guys. All right, here we go. Great Spirit, infinite intelligence of all things, you surround us all the time. You're in and throughout every cell of our body. You're breathing our heart. You're beating our hearts and breathing our chest. Our lungs are expanding and contracting. You're moving the sun across the sky and running the tides. You are inspiring us every single moment and pulling us toward what is ours to do, Great Spirit. We are so grateful for this time because we are returning to nature. We're returning to the soil. We're growing our own food. We're eating nutritious food that comes from the ground that our hands created. And Great Spirit, we get to watch as this wonderful planet turns to a more harmonious place where we are at peace, where all people matter, where our children are kept safe. We call that forth now, Great Spirit. We call that forth now, that we know that angels, legions and legions of angels are always around us, that our higher selves are always being guided, and we get to watch this movie as we are part of this game to create a better world. And Great Spirit, we just honor Marjorie right now in her journey of following her own guided intuition, her own inspired intuition, following her own journey to help thousands of people learn how to grow their own food. We send her so much abundance and so much safety and the knowingness that she is always taken care of and she's doing the right thing for humanity. Thank you so much for her journey, Great Spirit. And we know that every person watching this video, hearing this on the radio, is inspired to take one action toward growing their own food and being more sustainable and honoring community, bringing in aloha, finding their ohana, their family. We, Great Spirit, we are so grateful to watch this world becoming a better place. We call that forth now. We know it is done, and so it is. Marjory, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh,
And
thank
everybody,
you.
go check out her website. Much aloha.